All right, welcome back to the Just Some BS podcast. We have Mar on the show today, so thank you, Mar, for joining.
Pleasure to be here. Excited to finally join you on this podcast.
Yeah. So I'd like to go through people's LinkedIn's real quick. So it says Planet First Initiative lead at Nimblist. So you gave me a lot of context in the podcast form, so thank you for that.
Of
So
course.
can you run through kind of your life in a minute to 2 minutes and give everybody a little bit of context because you got a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to start this is to basically start from the very beginning. I'm originally from Alexandria, Egypt. I was born and raised there. If you don't know anything about Alexandria, Egypt, we're basically below sea level, right? So growing up, I kind of witnessed climate change firsthand,
Mm.
and I saw a lot of flooding happening around the coast and people losing their homes, and that kind of hit me very early on in my age, and I wanted to make sure I do something sustainability wise. Along the way, I was also a musician. My mom made sure I took my piano lessons. We went to these opera concerts, and I was a big fan of music. Music was a big part of my life, and growing up, I was kind of like in the middle of, well, I want to like focus on the environment, help the environment, improve the environment, but at the same time, I'm really into music. So basically, we moved around a lot growing up. We lived in India, we lived in places like South Africa,
Mm.
Dubai, and throughout these countries, I was able to kind of experience climate change in different ways. You know, in Dubai, every year we're constantly hitting new records of climate, like heat, basically. And then in India, I'd see like the monsoons constantly getting worse and people losing their lives. So again, I was still a very like big advocate for the environment growing up, and then I graduated from high school and I decided to go to Penn State and basically major in renewable energy and sustainability. While I was at Penn State, music was also kind of blowing up for me a little bit. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to merge those two things. I went and I did my master's at Denver, and Denver has a massive music scene. So while I was there, I was able to talk with a lot of people, and I figured out, well, the best way to kind of converge those two things is kind of like focus on sustainability in the music industry and help the music industry and the entertainment industry in general become more sustainable. A quick fact that I learned that a typical concert, like let's say a Taylor Swift concert or something like that, the energy required for that can power up to 10,000 family homes. So
Wow.
imagine one night can power up to 10,000 family homes. And if you're getting that energy from like fossil fuels, that could just severely impact the environment. You know, we want to go to these concerts and have fun, but at the same time, we don't want to hurt the environment. So I kind of basically centered my thesis when I was graduating around how can we best decarbonize music venues, specifically in Denver, because that's where I was, and that's how I was able to kind of like talk with venue owners and see what we can do and all these things. So I was able to work with the director of sustainability of AEG and basically build a thesis to provide like a solution um, to music venues and how they can be more sustainable, how they can like offset their carbon emissions, and how their shows can basically be like have like minimal impact on the environment. So that was my thesis, and I graduated from that. And when I graduated, I realized, crap, like there are not a lot of positions available for these. Like this is like so niche, and I struggle to find a position that I'm very passionate about that kind of takes my music background and my sustainability into play. Until I moved to Pennsylvania, so I lived right next to Rockleditz,
Yep.
and you know I was actively looking for a position. I'm still lost, and then I had a meeting with Dan Sad, and I was like, man, like this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. This is like my dream. Like I don't want to just work in sustainability for like any other corporate company. I want to make sure it's kind of like based in the music industry and the live entertainment industry and help like lower the emissions on all these shows. And he was like, "Hey, man, like you should kind of like go to this networking event. It's nothing. It's just a sustainability networking event." And I go there, and the guy next to me, he was like, "Oh yeah, like I was telling him about like what I want to do," and he was like, "Oh, you should totally like check out this company, Nimblist. Like, they're nothing serious, but I know like the CEO and everything really cares about sustainability." And I was able to kind of just send like a cold email and like, listen, like this is my background. in music. This is my background in sustainability. I feel like we could work together and kind of start implementing some massive like sustainability initiatives into all the events that you're working. At the time, they worked with Green Day, Bon Jovi,
Hmm.
and massive clients, and so we clicked right away. They loved it. They loved the idea. As soon as I joined, I was like, okay, what we need to do is we need to open up a department within Nimblist that solely focuses on sustainability with your clients and also people who work with your clients. And so we were able to kind of build this Planet First Initiatives department, and I was able to take lead. And yeah, and one of our latest projects was the Robin Hood benefit. It's the single one of the largest single night fundraisers in the world, and we were able to make it the most sustainable benefit yet through PFI and everything. So that was excellent. That's how it came to be. You know.
That's so crazy to me from a couple of standpoints. One, like you didn't. So huge shout out to Dan Sod because he always preaches networking events. So he got a huge plug there.
Yeah.
I was just with him last week, and I think he was talking about networking events. He loves them, and he uses them very well, and also promotes them. So it's really fascinating because a lot of people would say, like, perfect example, I was a biology major and I'm doing nothing with that now, but you are very focused on what your passion is and not giving up on that to the point where selling it to a company to create its own division and own vertical is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a flex that I have. Is I tell everyone I meet, like, I basically wrote my own job description. You know,
Yeah.
um, again, unfortunately, the job that I have is not very common in the music industry. You know, the music industry in a way is kind of late to the game when it comes to sustainability, and so you wouldn't really find it on Indeed jobs or anything like that. But it's kind of like a story about creating your own path, you know,
Hmm.
finding your niche and creating your own path to make sure like what you want to do is what you're going to do, you know. And you know, yeah, it's hard in the beginning. You're going to get a lot of rejections. You're going to get a lot of people ignoring you, but when it clicks, it clicks. And that's what happened with Nimblist. I sent an email and I was like, it's a 9 out of 10 chance they're not even going to answer it. And then they responded, and I was able to meet with them and kind of like pitch myself, and it went very well after that. And till this day, we still like can't believe how it came to be. Uh, so yeah, and I always talk to people who are trying to get into this industry is like, you have to figure out a way. Like, a lot of these things are not readily available for you. You're not going to find this position on any job listings or anything like that. You have to network. You have to meet people. You have to pitch yourself, and eventually you're going to get where you want to be. And once you do that, you're going to be great at what you do because you literally started from zero.
Hmm.
And I think that value can probably be placed on a lot of things. Like sometimes, what is the Wayne Gretzky quote that everybody loves? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But I think even the networking piece, taking unorthodox ways to get to people or get your point across, or I mean, one of the reasons I do this podcast because I hate networking events, and Dan Sod, no, I'm anti everything he's about, but this allows me to stay front of mind, create content that allows me to keep myself out there while never having to leave my house. So sometimes you just have to get a little creative with your solutions, even if it's not something you exactly want to do, which kind of is exactly what you did. You said, you know what, let's just go find it and create this and shoot the shot and see what happens.
I'm not gonna lie, like, networking events are very stressful for me.
They're horrible, dude.
Especially like, you know, when you see someone and you're like, I really want to talk to them, but then they're in this like circle. You know what I mean? It's like the circle is closed off and you're trying to find a way to talk to them and trying to like meet people. But you know, something that helped for me is when I was growing up, I went to 10 schools. So we were constantly moving from country to country. So almost every year of my education before college, I was the new kid at school.
Sure.
You know, and that kind of like built the characteristic of like, okay, well, I have to meet these people. I consider myself an introvert, but with extrovert characteristics,
Sure.
you know? So I just have to force myself to kind of break the ice and just do it and like not take myself too seriously in the beginning. And that kind of works, that kind of translated well into networking events, you know? And I consider myself like, okay, as if what if I was like a new kid at a school at this networking event, and then I just introduced myself to people. Some people kind of like are not interested. Other people like are interested, and that's when those great conversations happen, and it makes everything worth it, you know. And a big thing that I did was there's this thing called the Conference Live that takes place at Rock Lidditz every year, and I wasn't invited. I wasn't, you know, but what I wanted to network with as many people as possible because it was just all the music industry giants were basically there.
Hmm.
So I had my girlfriend drop me off at Rock Lidditz, and you know, again, I wasn't invited to the conference, but the bar right outside the conference is like available. So I just go there, I get a drink, and I just sit down. And everyone who's walking out of the conference, I go up and introduce them. I'm like, oh, like what do you do and stuff like that. A lot of them had like no interest in sustainability whatsoever. But then there were a few people who were like, oh yeah, no, we care about sustainability. We're trying to implement it into our company. We just don't know how. Like what do you think about this and that and all these things, and then we'd have this great conversation, and I'd walk away like feeling okay, like I've gotten a lot of like I've benefited a lot from this conference, even though I wasn't even invited or I didn't have any tickets. So you just got to be creative with how you network and how you talk to people.
Yeah, that's actually brilliant. You like 007 them.
Yes.
With that, with the people who aren't interested, can you what's a couple things you wish people understood more about sustainability?
That it's not as hard as you think it is. You
Hmm.
know, a big part of my job as the Planet First Initiatives lead is kind of explaining to people, like everyone who thinks about sustainability, they're like, okay, we have to commit 100%. We have to like spend all this money. We have to take all these initiatives, and for a lot of people, that's kind of like a big step, and it scares them away. What we do at PFI is we kind of like roll it out very slowly. We're like, okay, what if we did just this one simple thing, and then next year all you have to do is just kind of like better yourself. You know what I mean? It's kind of like improve on that one thing basically. So what we do is we try to build a story, right? And you know, I deal with a lot of numbers, I deal with a lot of data, and for someone who doesn't understand sustainability that well, or carbon emissions, or scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, all these things, if I throw at them a lot of numbers, I'm going to scare them away. What I do is I ask them for some data. I'm like, okay, like how much energy do you use per month? Like, look at your utility bills. Send those to me, right? And I crank up the numbers myself, and then I use those numbers and I build a story that anyone can understand. You know what I mean? And that kind of helps them understand sustainability better and what they can do better. And then when they realize that it's not as hard as they thought it was, then they're like excited. They're like, oh, what? Like, we had no idea. How can we be better? Right. And so first year, we start them off like a starter pack. Like, hey, you could do these simple things. It's not going to cost you a lot of money, but look at all these impacts that it's going to create, you know? And then they're like, that's great, you know? And then they next year, they're like, okay, like, how can we be better? You know, a lot of the events that we worked on this year, they're already like preparing us for next year. Like, how can we improve on our sustainability initiatives next year? How can we report it to they're so excited about it, they want to report it to their audiences, they want to market it, they want to make sure they're like again, it's like a culture shift, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And the more they learn about it, the more they want to do it. And so a big part of PFI, Planet First Initiatives, is education, educating the client on what they can do and how little, you know, resources it takes. Like, it doesn't require a lot of money in the beginning, and the impact is still massive, especially if you haven't done anything regarding sustainability. That first impact is massive. um, and that's usually how we build our relationship with our clients, you know, and we don't scare them away, and that works pretty well for us.
Give me 3 simple steps into that. Like, what are 3 things that companies or organizations or events could do that would be really easy, great, low cost of entry to get people kind of over that initial hump?
All right, the first one is waste management. All right,
Mm.
it's so easy to have bins in the event. That's like compost, recycling, and then landfill. Right. So, for example, we just finished an event called Festival Napa Valley. It was over in California. Um, we, it was our first year working with them. We weren't able to do much in sustainability, but we were able to do these tiny little things that had a big impact. For example, the carpet at the event, we were able to take that and recycle it for a small amount of, like, for $60. So the carpet was recycled for $60, and by doing that, we were able to avoid so much emissions. And so I'm like, $60, and you avoided X amount of emissions. Like, look how easy it is. We're not asking for a massive like initiative. They were able also to work with this company called Overdrive. And basically what Overdrive does is they transition away from diesel generators to batteries. And so if you go to any concert, for example, and it has a diesel generator, you usually hear the diesel generator, the sound. And, if you're listening to music, that's not ideal. And as well, it releases a lot of emissions, but they were able to basically change that and use batteries instead. So now you have this, like, well, first of all, you're avoiding a lot of emissions by using batteries. And then you're also taking advantage of the fact that you don't have this loud noise constantly going on while the music is playing. And so we're constantly trying to show our clients that, like, yes, you are avoiding emissions by taking these initiatives, but at the same time, you're not, like, there are other benefits. You can either be saving money, you don't have to be dealing with the loud noise. You could build a report and show it to your audience, so then your audience are, like, more interested in going to your event because you're environmentally friendly.
Sure.
So the first one is waste management. The second one is localizing operations. Instead of getting your floral designs from another state far away and having these massive trucks transport these things, look into your local scene and see how can you utilize your local scene so you're cutting down on the emissions for supply chain. And so rather than the truck traveling 100 miles to get to you, it's only traveling 5-6 miles. Now that's a lot of emissions avoided right there, and that could also save you on costs. If your if your vendor is nearby, they're not going to charge as much when it comes to trucking. And finally, the last thing is transitioning into basically, like, renewable energy or battery storage, at least. That is usually, like, the biggest step that we take. But at the same time, the impacts are massive. By doing that, we're just able to, like, kind of reach the point where we're, like, establish ourselves as, like, an environmentally friendly event, and they're able to do so much more in the coming years and all these things. But, like, that's usually the level that's like, okay, you take your sustainability very seriously. You're not playing around, and a lot of, like, musicians, for example, Billie Eilish at Lollapalooza, she was able to kind of utilize that and have, like, solar panels for her set that were also along with battery storage. That she worked with Overdrive. And that kind of, like, shows that you're committed to sustainability, and this is not just something that, like, you're, I know, playing around or whatever. You're very serious about sustainability.
Yeah, they're not massive overhauls either. I think you're dead on with people thinking it's going to be this giant expensive thing. And even locally sourcing, I think, is a brilliant way to put that, because that could be many aspects. It could be chairs and tables, it could be tents, it could be whatever. Really locally sourcing and cutting down on the carbon coming. Yeah, that's pretty brilliant.
Absolutely. And then another thing that we offer, which we're not big fans of, but it's something that people can still do. For example, if there are certain carbon emissions that you cannot avoid, we look at something called carbon offsets, right? And it's basically, you pay, for example, you released 50 tons of carbon emissions, you pay X amount to kind of offset those emissions. We don't like it because it's like, just because you can afford to offset those emissions doesn't mean that you should release them. Our plan A is always to avoid the emissions to begin with. But if there's nothing you can do and you want to be like a net zero event, there's a way to offset those emissions by buying something called carbon offsets. And so we usually help our clients. We're like, okay, you care about sustainability, but there's nothing that you can do right now to eliminate those emissions. So let us show you some, like, carbon offsets that basically what they pay X amount of money that can go towards, like, a solar farm or something like that. And that offsets the emissions that they release for their event. So it's still better than doing nothing. It's not ideal, but it's still better than doing nothing. And they're supporting the local solar farms and stuff like that. So that's usually something else that we pitch to them. and again, show them that it's not as hard as they think it is, and as soon as they realize that it's not as hard, they're willing to start taking on the hard stuff, and that's very admirable, and at least with the people that I worked with. So that's great.
Yeah. So since you kind of launched this initiative in this vertical, what's the biggest win and what's the hardest truth you've had to face?
Ooh. So the biggest win is the Robinhood benefit, right? So Robinhood has been going on for over 30 years. They before I came on, they worked with Nimblist and they kind of cared about sustainability a little bit, but we weren't able to kind of like take it on as a big initiative and kind of have it in the brochure and all these things until this year. I was able to be on site for that, and the biggest thing was like a lot. For example, let me give you an example. The food waste that was coming out of the guests, we had around 3,000 guests at the Robinhood benefit. The food waste that was coming out of the guests would just be taken and thrown into landfill, right? And that would create a lot of emissions. When you throw things in landfill, that creates a lot of emissions. This year when I came on, I was like, okay, wait, like let's not do that. Let's collect all this food waste that's coming out of 3,000 guests and let's compost it instead. And basically, we worked with the Javits Center in New York, and they worked with another compost facility where we took all this food waste and we composted it, and we were able to turn it into energy that powers over about 5,000 commercial buildings and homes. You know what I mean? And so the fact that we were able to do that, so we're not only were we able to avoid emissions, we were able to also power a lot of like buildings with that food waste.
You like compounded it.
Exactly. So, and that's the beauty of it. So that was like a big win in my eyes because it's never been done before. We were able to eliminate beef from like guest catering, and also crew catering. That was also never. It hasn't really been done before at the benefit. So being able to like get those wins at such a recognizable event, that was a massive win for Planet First Initiatives. We're very proud of that. And the Robinhood team is also very proud of that. And they're already coming to us like, all right, like what are we going to do next year? Like, how can we top this? How can we be better? And so again, that's a massive win for us. The hardest thing for us, for me at least, is that when I'm collecting data, again, a lot of people are not experienced with sustainability. So I'm asked to build them a report and to show them the emissions that were avoided. I need certain data from our vendors. And so that can be challenging because, again, they don't have the time to kind of send me this data because I need it in a structured way, or they just don't care enough for that. But what we were able to do at PFI, we're like, okay, like how can we make it so easy for people to send us this data that it wouldn't really take a lot of time. So I was basically able to build these data collection templates that match their workflow. So for example, if they work in a specific way, I build them a template that I'm like, all you have to do is just add this tiny little thing to it at the end and send it to me, and that's it. So I make it very easy for them so that all the hard work is on me, not on them. And something else that I was able to do is I've been able to work with this startup AI company. And basically what they do is they help us collect data, and all you have to do is just drag and drop a file, and it organizes all the data for you in a certain way. So it's just like, it's easy on me and it's easy on the clients. And I also have a quick turnaround, and we're constantly like faced with these challenges of people not having the time to like send over the data and kind of calculate these emissions and all these things. But we're constantly trying to make it easier and easier and easier. So there's limited excuses that you can give me about whether or not you don't care about sustainability.
Do you think the AI arena will need to go through this same process?
Yes. It's basically, so AI is a double-edged sword, right? We're very well aware of the environmental consequences that come along with AI. But now you have to find that gray area of like, how can you use it to your advantage so that the benefits outweigh the cons, basically, right? And so, for example, if you're writing an email, write your email. Don't ask ChatGPT to write the email for you. You know what I mean? Like, but then when it comes to like navigating through I don't know, like a lot of like the data I get, I have to like navigate through like more than 1,000 entries of like data just to build like a carbon report. And if you have AI that can do it for you in 10 minutes instead of like 2 days, that's a plus, because then you could have a quick turnaround. You could promote sustainability in these events. They want to do it more. And then it can kind of like outweigh like the amount of like the consequences environmentally for using that AI. You know what I mean? But it is definitely something that not a lot of people are like looking into right now, but it's something that people are going to have to like looking into it. Like, okay, this AI tool or this AI machine or whatever is using a lot of resources that is actually harming the planet.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's going to be the next big hurdle, because it's not even, I mean, it's big, but it's not big yet.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's going to be the problem.
a lot of things in AI, people are still don't understand like the ethical part of it. There's not a lot of regulations for the ethical side of things with AI, and that can be very dangerous. But I feel like as the years go on and as these AI tools develop more and more, they're gonna have to start putting certain restrictions to help to like avoid problems environmentally, of course, and also like ethics stuff and moral
Yeah.
stuff.
This may be a super ignorant question, but I can imagine that explaining data science, renewable energy to artist sectors has got to be a little bit of a hurdle as well.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the lessons I learned from this position. Before I started this position, when I would talk to people, I would like throw at them so many words and these big words and all these things, and you just look at their faces and it's just blank. Like, what is this guy talking about? Like, get me out of here, And when I started this position, Spike and Scott, they're part of the Nimblist team. We were like, how can we show like what we care about in a way where people actually understand it, and that's where we got into storytelling. And when we build a report, like I said, we tell a story. We tell a story that anyone can understand. And then I use that skill. As I said, I'm a musician, so I worked with a lot of other musicians, and I usually talk with them, and I'm like, listen, man, like, I care about sustainability. I want to be able to implement sustainability at all these events. And it really does start with the artist. Going back to the Billie Eilish example, it was Billie Eilish who said, I want to make sure that my show at Lollapalooza uses solar panels, right? And so when the artist says that, everyone will make way, everyone will find a way to make sure that happens, right? And so what I'm trying to do is, from the artist side of things, I want to talk to my artist friends who are going on tour and all these things. I'm like, hey, like, what if you do this? What if you do that? And it can kind of like improve the sustainability initiatives of your tour, and you can even market it if you want, but it will limit the environmental impact you have. The issue is right now is that with small artists, the margins of profits are very, very slim. So when they're trying to take on sustainable initiatives, sometimes they can't do it because they're like, well, if we do that, we're gonna go under. We're gonna not be making any profit. So it's hard, right? For bigger artists, like for example Billie Eilish and Coldplay, it's easy to kind of implement those things because they have a larger margin of profit. But with the smaller artists and the people that I'm talking to constantly, it's hard for them to kind of take these things on by themselves. And so one of my goals is to kind of build a collective of artists. Think about it as like unionizing artists, but like in a way of sustainability, but building a collective of artists who like care about these things and they want to do it. And so, and through that collective, we can pressure other vendors, the venues, whatever, to kind of help us implement those sustainable changes. And that's going to take a lot of pitching. That's going to take a lot of courage. But that's kind of one of my big goals in what I do. And as music again progresses for me as well, I'm going to be able to apply those things to my own tours and to my own shows.
Speaking of that, can you tell us a bit about your music?
Absolutely, yeah. So I grew up learning classical music, and I was a big fan of classical music. I was also introduced to dance music pretty early in my life. I watched like things like the Tomorrowland Music Festival, like after movies and stuff. And so what I went, what I wanted to find my niche. And so I was like, what if I take this orchestra and classical music and blend it with dance music? I was able to find that niche, and it worked pretty well. And I was able to get a lot of interesting opportunities from it. And I'm one of my biggest goals. I was just talking to my girlfriend about this. One of my biggest goals is to perform in front of the pyramids with the orchestra and dance music. And again, as sustainability progresses, my music progresses with it, and it's vice versa. As my music progresses, the sustainability side of things progresses, and so I'm very lucky to have found like this cool spot in the middle where like both sides of my life are growing at the same time. But yeah, that's basically like the music that I make and all these things.
That's amazing. When you're feeling super creative with your music, do you feel that bleeds right over to sustainability projects?
Absolutely.
Like when you get in that flow, I'm sure like they you can't see the line between the two.
I mean, when you're making music, I feel like a lot of artists can say this, but when you're making music, you're trying your best not to sound like the next artist. You know what I mean? And in order for you to do so, it needs a lot of critical thinking. You need to think outside the box. You're like, what hasn't been done before? And so that kind of does bleed into like sustainability work. It's like, okay, well, how can I get super creative in making this event sustainable? And finding a lot, like, for example, the food waste stuff at Robinhood, like using food to power building. I never in my entire life thought that would even be possible. Like when I was like studying, but like finding these creative ways that A, limits your emissions, and B, tells a kick-ass story, and that kind of bleeds into each other because like you're getting creative with music and now you're getting creative with sustainability, and thinking outside the box. So absolutely, they both go hand in hand.
And I think we can say this expert opinion. What do you think the long term, like how do we fix the long term effects of what we're going through? There's probably not one thing. I'm sure it's a culminate. We're going to need probably all of them.
Yeah.
But what's your long term outlook on some of that?
So speaking about sustainability as a whole, not just even in the music industry, but as a whole, and I don't know if you're aware of, basically we have certain goals set for 2050. The United Nations has set certain goals that we're trying to be net zero by 2050, right? Unfortunately, we are very, very late to that goal. The first thing that we have to focus on, because nothing moves without it, is regulation and policy, right? Regulations in place that incentivize solar panels, that incentivize electric vehicles, that incentivize proper waste management. People are more likely to do it. What's stopping the majority of people or companies or industries or whatever is the money, right? A lot of people care about the environment, but they care a lot more about money. If you're able to incentivize sustainability in a way where if you do this, you get these tax cuts, which we have certain regulations right now that are in place, but if we can build upon that and continue pushing these regulations, more people are going to adopt sustainable habits. And so the first thing, of course, is making sure the regulation in place. Like, for example, Europe is doing great with that. Europe, they have very strict regulations in place where you can get fined if you're not properly managing your waste. They have a lot of solar panels, solar farms. So it's very easy to implement these things in Europe. Here in America, there are still a lot of regulations that need to be placed to kind of like, I wouldn't like to say force the hand, but encourage people to start really caring about the environment and caring about the things that they do. And then once that is done, the second thing is, of course, education and a culture shift, right? The people who are not taking care of the environment is mostly because they are not educated in the prospect of sustainability. If I can teach someone about okay, going off topic here a little bit, but when I was working Robinhood, I was there at the waste stations telling people like, this goes to compost, this goes to recycling, this goes to landfill, right? And so people are learning like, okay, like my food goes into compost. These plastic bottles / cans go into recycling. Oh, what if I just take this and apply it at home? So now when they're home and they have food, now they have a compost bin that they can compost their food in, or they know what goes into recycling and what goes into the landfill, you know? And so educating people about these things is very important to then transition into that culture change. And once that culture change is in place, then meeting those net zero goals is going to be much easier than it is right now. So I'm just trying to do my part as best as I can in the music industry. I hope one day this can even go outside the music industry and I can help other industries as well. But I know that the music industry is behind when it comes to these things. So I want to do my best to kind of educate both vendors, artists, management teams on like sustainability and what they can do, and that it's not as hard as they think it is.
Yeah, I even think some of your earlier ideas, just thinking back to stuff we do even at the company, it's like, some of that's absolutely plausible. And like you said, it's pretty low in the sense of effort or even money, time. So yeah, that's really good. I think the education piece is absolutely massive for
Yeah.
what we're all fighting against, to be honest.
Through my work, I was able to get connected with this company called Alma Carpet, and they basically provide the carpeting for a lot of the events that we work at. And what they do is they provide the carpet, then they take the carpet, they shred the carpet, and then they recycle it. Either they recycle it and then they create more carpet, or they recycle it and they create things like utensils or things like that. And so they've been doing it for a while, but they weren't reporting anything. They weren't kind of like keeping track of their emissions or anything like that. But I was able to work with them, and basically the biggest thing that you could do is show the emissions that you avoided. You know what I mean? And you could even show it to your clients, for example. So, for example, in Alma Carpet's situation, they were able to take that number and like show it to their clients, like, oh, we avoided these emissions by using the Alma Carpet service. And so that goes back to telling a story. Like, you're not just telling them 600 tons of carbon emissions were released or whatever. You're saying like, by using our service, we were able to eliminate 40 tons of carbon emissions. And that's what 40 tons of carbon emissions means, like driving 100,000 miles or something like that. You know what I mean? So just basically being able to tell a story through your data is one of the most important things. And a lot of our clients are starting to understand that. And that's how we're getting more clients and more people to join the Planet First Initiative's cause. Is they're like, they want to be able to tell their own sustainability story, and they want to be able to tell their audience the emissions that were avoided by taking on these sustainable initiatives.
Yeah, that's really good. The story piece is huge and I even think, like you said, the comparison of how far the drive is, because you have to put it in terms that we'll actually understand. Because the carbon offset is not a math equation that we all understand yet. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's really good. I like that idea.
Yeah, definitely.
You said as artists, our influence extends beyond music. Has that ever made you unpopular in a room?
Yeah, it does. That's a great question. That's a really good question, because you get this thing, and it's like, stick to music. You know what I mean? It's like, you should. What are you talking about? Stick to music. This is what stick to it. And you get this a lot as well with like other like athletes, for example. If athletes want to take a stand on something, people are always to be like, stick to basketball, stick to football, stick to this. And I think from the artist perspective, we're in a very unique situation, because you have these listeners who are literally lending you their ears, and you're at such a advantageous like position where no, you don't just stick to music. If you have something else outside of music that you have to say, or something else outside of music that you have to stand for, this is your time to shine and kind of stand for that thing, and like I said, I'm very passionate about the environment and sustainability. And it's like, a lot of people unfortunately, there's still a lot of people who are like climate change deniers, and I'm telling people, like, look at all the hurricanes that are happening, and look at all the natural disasters that are happening. Look at all the people that are losing their lives. This is happening directly because of climate change. And then you still have these people who are denying it, and they're like, stick to music, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't get involved with these things. Just like make your little beep boop music, and and that's it. But I refuse to do that, and a lot of artists that I'm talking to also refuse to do that, and I think it's going to take a turn where people are taking a stand and are like, enough is enough, and this is what we stand for. And if you don't like what I have to say, don't listen to my music. We don't care, but this is the audience that we want, and this is what we want to tell our audience. And I think it's kind of more of an obligation to any influencer or any musician, that if you have a lot of people looking up to you, listening to what you have to say, listening to your music, or listening to or watching your persona online, you have the obligation to take a stand for something that is bigger than yourself and your music, and put it out there in the world to make sure that you make an impact, and that's something that I live by every day. And I'm hoping through my work in sustainability, I can make that impact and educate other artists and even attendees and fans on how they can be more sustainable, on how they can take care of the environment, and also how they can like stand up for something that's bigger than themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the core of the word influencer is influence.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But influence them to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess whatever you're passionate about, as long as you stick to that and you're giving that message. Now, I know that's not always as positive as it should be, I'm sure, in some people's worlds, but yeah, I forget what the quote is that I'm thinking of, but it's something like, if you're pleasing everyone, you're probably not doing something that's worth it, or something like that.
Exactly.
So
if everyone like likes you, it's probably not doing something wrong. Or something like that. Yeah.
If you could collaborate with any artist on a music meets sustainability project, who would it be? And what would you do together?
That's a good question.
I got two good questions in a row. Let's go.
You're killing it today. But I thought about this question before, but it wasn't an artist. It was a music festival. I was like, this music festival, for example, Tomorrowland. It's this big music festival in Belgium. It's basically like the Olympics of electronic dance music. Think of it.
Okay.
And I'm like, if I can, there's like a massive open field at the end of Tomorrowland, and I was like, if I can like somehow get booked for Tomorrowland and convince them to have a solar installation, at least for my show, I think that would be incredible. And the energy that is powering my show is powered through solar energy, and showcasing to other artists that this is possible. That would be like, I don't like saying end goals, because I don't believe in end goals. But if I did have an end goal, that would be one of them. You know what I mean? Another thing is I'm Egyptian, and right now there are a lot of concerts that are going on in front of the pyramids. And Egypt gets a lot of sunlight and all these things. And I was like, if I can have a show in front of the pyramids, and have that show powered by solar energy, A, that's really cool. And B, is like I can start introducing these things to Egypt, and introducing how we can be more sustainable in Egypt. Egypt is also still a little bit behind when it comes to sustainability, and they have all this sunlight. So if I'm able to have an opportunity like that, I think that would be incredible. But when it comes to artists, I think the first name that popped in my head is Coldplay. A lot of their shows are powered by solar energy. They have this corner at their events where it's basically like, you're a fan, you can hop on a bike and you can bike during their show.
Get out. That's really cool.
And I believe they also had this thing where it's kind of like a floor, and you dance on that floor, and it takes that energy and converts it into
kinetic. That's dope.
Yeah. So they're massive artists, and they're able to do so much. So if I'm able to collab with any artist, it would 100% be Coldplay, because they just come up with these crazy ideas, and I feel like I've learned so much from them when it comes to these things.
It's so interesting because you went down the road of like a venue, and my second question, which you just covered first, was who's on your Green Dream tour?
Oh my god! So
you can take that name if you want.
Green Dream tour. So I don't know if you've ever been to Denver, but Red Rocks. If you know Red Rocks,
I know the venue. I've never been there.
It's such a. I went to like a 5-hour concert there one day. It was such a beautiful venue, and I feel like being able to also work with a venue like Red Rocks would be amazing. For my thesis, there was this massive venue in Denver called Mission Ballroom. You know, the roof of Mission Ballroom is massive. A rule of thumb is 15% of a roof of a building is usually like left for HVAC systems and stuff like that. But then you have 85% of it that's just doing nothing.
Wide open.
Exactly. So, you know, and a big part of my thesis was like, what if we installed solar panels on there? And I was able to kind of build like a cost analysis of it and how long would it be until they get their money back. And everything seemed very doable. You know, it would take a big upfront cost in the beginning, but then the return on your money would be within like you make your money back within like the like 12, 13 years. And you'd again, a massive roof like that, you'd be able to use a lot of your energy from solar. Um, and so, yeah, that again, I just want to show these venues that it's if you care enough, it's not as hard as you think it is, and you can apply these things, and in the long run, the benefits outweigh the costs by a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good. It's so fascinating to talk to somebody who's so into music because I'm actually not, and my wife thinks I'm crazy. I will have you say though, if I listen to any music, especially when I'm like working or doing yard work or anything, it's usually like electronic because I don't actually listen to words. Like I couldn't sit here, Mar, and tell you a single song in the world and what it actually means. Not one.
That actually, me and you are exactly the same.
Yes.
That drives my girlfriend crazy because when we're in the car and we're singing lyrics, and it would be a song that we listened to 1,000 times.
Yes.
And maybe I just know the chorus and that's it. And she's like, how do you not know the lyrics to this song? We listen to this almost every day. And to make things worse, I have songs out that I produced, that I created, that have lyrics, and I still don't know the lyrics to my own songs.
Okay, that's worse than me.
And I think, I don't know what it is. I just think it's how my brain operates, where I know exactly, like I listen to any instrumental and I know exactly when that synth comes in and the melody that synth plays, and everything about the instrumental. When it comes to lyrics, it's like a zero. My worst nightmare is karaoke. I would not do well at karaoke. First of all, my voice is not the best, but also lyrics, I would just have to like have my face glued to the screen,
Yeah,
like read every word because I'm just not good at lyrics. And my girlfriend is insane because you know she has so many songs that she knows every single word to. And I'm like, how do you do that? I have no idea how you do that because my brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I could even probably know the words, but like I have no emotional connection to the story of the song.
Yeah.
Where like songs can change people's moods. And like to me, the beat is either good, I'm down with it, or it's not. Like that's the difference for me. And like I guess that's why I don't listen to a whole lot of music that often. I'm more of a podcast person, which is strange because that's all words and I have to listen. So
Well,
none of that makes sense.
You don't have to memorize all the words in your podcast.
True.
Though, you know?
So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'm not that strange.
No, not at all. Like, we're exactly the same. If not, I'm worse.
Well, but you can play all of the instruments.
Yeah. And what's crazy is like the instrumental actually plays such a massive role in the song. There are a lot of songs out there that have very dark lyrics, but then the instrumental is like party jamming. So despite people dancing to, you know, very dark lyrics, but people are still dancing to it, you know? Yeah. An example that comes to my head is Pumped Up Kicks, you know what I mean? So it's like the lyrics are very dark and it's raising awareness on a bad situation and school shootings and these things. But then the instrumental is like people just dance to it, you know what I mean? And have fun to it. And so it's like,
so maybe we're not that far off because if people are, you know, if all you're hearing is the beat, then and that's what's making people emotional, then maybe we're not that far off.
Yeah. No, I like to in my music. I'm not a big fan. Unfortunately, right now in the music industry, people like the quick dopamine hits. You know what I mean? Like a
that's everything. It's not just the music industry.
And absolutely. And it comes from TikTok and Instagram Reels, stuff like that. People are used to these quick dopamine hits. So, you know, putting out a 4-minute song of like an instrumental, you know, sometimes doesn't perform the best compared to like a 2-minute song with a cool lyric on it. But I'm very focused on telling a story and like the orchestra. If you want to really showcase the beauty of the orchestra and stuff like that, you can't rush the song. And I've sent a lot of tracks to labels, and they're like, "Oh no, I feel like this could like lose like the audience or whatever because you have this like massive orchestral break going on in the middle of the song." But I'm like, again, that's the beauty of it, just showcasing the beauty of an orchestra. I don't want to just like go through the cool parts of the song very quickly and basically satisfy the listener in a minute and then have them go on to the next song. I want them to go on this journey with me, and that's what I continue to do till today.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. That's really funny that we're a similar brain like that.
I wonder if there's like if that's like a when people have like personality types or whatever, but like
Yeah,
if that's
or
like
right and left brain.
Yeah, exactly. If if your brain is like this, you're more likely to not remember any lyrics, but really understand the instrumentals and stuff like that.
Well, we both love data, so maybe that's the key.
That is very true. I've had, again, I talked to you about this AI tool that helps me analyze the data and stuff like that. It helps make my job like easier, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of bummed out because of it, because I love the process. I love getting and our HR at Nimblist, Trish, she thinks I'm insane because I'm like, send me all the data. The more data, the better. I love it. And she would send me like this data entry with like 1,000, this template with like 1,000 entries and stuff like that. And I'm like, you just made my day. And she thinks I'm crazy for that, but like it tickles my brain in the right way.
Yes.
Where I'm very happy to like analyze this data, and it makes me happy. So now I have this AI tool that does it all for me. So I'm kind of bummed out because of that. Because I want to be effective, but also I want to like have fun with it.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings around data is like you can never have too much, right? Because you can never recreate it. So if you have more, you just filter out the stuff you don't want, but it's always there. But you can never go back and pull it again in history if you didn't have it in the first place. So like there'll be times that we'll be collecting stuff and I'm like, I don't have a use for this right now, but I know I'm going to in the future. So let's just keep going and we'll have it in a table and we'll have it in there coded some way because maybe in the future we're going to come to it and go, oh man, we can use that now. Now, especially with AI and being able to pull in tables through agents, it's just, man, the more the merrier.
Yeah, that's what I tell my clients all the time. They're like, should we send you this? And even if like I don't really need it, I'm just like, yeah, send it. Because like I'd much rather just have it than emailing you after a week and like, by the way, it turns out I actually did need this.
Yeah.
I just rather have all the data. And yeah, as the process for collecting data improves, like I said, I have this tool that basically like it's like a Google Drive. I share a Google Drive with you, and you drop all the files, and then the files show up in my AI tool, and then the AI kind of like helps me analyze those files and organize it for me, that I'm able to calculate it so quickly. So like the process that used to take a day and a half or 2 days now takes about 20 minutes. And that, again, I am losing on a lot of the fun, but it's helping me kind of turn around our services to clients, and they're like, oh, like this is quick. Like we're able to take the numbers, and then I use those numbers to kind of build the story, and then I send it back out to clients in a quick turnaround, and then they're usually very like satisfied with how quick it was, how easy it was, and they come back for more.
Yeah, I mean, poor macros, right? Macros are slowly dying now because you don't need them anymore.
The industries are changing at a very quick pace.
Yeah.
I remember what I knew from AI, like the actual AI. I mean, AI has been around for many, many years, but the AI that we're discussing right now, what I knew from it was like, I think it was like 3 years ago or something like that. My friends and I were like using this tool. It was like an image generation tool, and we were like building like the stupidest like images. It was like a raccoon who was the leader of a cult and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And so that's what I was like, oh yeah, AI. I mean, it's a fad. It's gonna take up a lot of time. And then in 3 years, the way it managed to change a lot of the industries is exciting, but also very scary.
Yes.
I talk with a lot of people and they're like, well, AI is going to have my job next year anyways. And I'm like, that's false, because if you don't change anything about yourself right now, probably, but the people who are going to be able to like move up are the ones who are able to utilize AI very early on and understand it and use it to their advantage. And so it will quicken, you can use it to your advantage. It will quicken your workflow and make you even better. You know what I mean? So it's not going to take your job if you understand it and if you use it in a moral and effective way.
Love that.
And then, of course, we have the artificial general intelligence, and they're like, we're predicting that's going to come out in 2029 or whatever. Again, you have to be able to think outside the box and bend AI rules and AI knowledge to support you as much as you can, and that will benefit you in more ways than you can. In more ways than you think. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right now, I was working, like I said, with a startup company, and they don't have like coding engineers anymore. They have this position called AI engineers. Like they're not computer scientists or whatever. They're just called AI engineers.
Yep.
And they use a lot of times they use AI to code for them, but
Yep.
they have to be able to prompt properly. They have to be able to utilize the right agents and all these things. And again, a lot of them used to be computer scientists and were big into coding, but they picked up on the change in culture and all these things that were taking place, and they were able to position themselves in a way where they're still needed by the industry that they're working in.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's evolving really, really fast, which I think is the scary part for people. But
Yeah.
so you've done a whole lot before the age of 30. What's the next on the docket? What's on the horizon? What's in the legacy rules for you?
You know what's crazy? Like you say this, but then at the same time, sometimes I do look back and I'm like, oh, I could be doing more. You know what I mean? And I
That's
feel like that's like
humans.
the age that we live in, where you know, 30 years ago we didn't have Instagram and stuff like that. You weren't comparing yourself to like thousands of others around the world. But you know, I think I have to be able to kind of look back at what I've achieved and be appreciative of it.
Sure.
And as soon as someone is able to appreciate what they've done so far to get to the position that they're at, the vision ahead usually tends to be clearer. And I think what I want to do is I want to make sure that the music that I'm creating and the sustainable initiatives that I'm building with Nimblist kind of converge even more. And Nimblist is a production design company. They design stages for Bon Jovi, Chris Brown, all these things. The ultimate like career path for me would be a musician who is working with Nimblist as like my designer, and we're able to do all these cool shows and have it be one of the most sustainable shows in the industry. I think that's kind of where I'm working towards in my career.
It's a pretty baller vision.
Yeah. I feel like it's nice to have these massive dreams. Reach for the stars, and if you miss, you land on the clouds. And I think just I'm trying to reach for the stars as much as I can, and then yeah, I feel like this podcast is already great for me.
I think there's a huge power in having such clarity. It's pretty rare to have that much clarity in one's life, so I think you should be super proud to have that. And even with having the lofty goal, but it being very specific, I think that's a huge plus as well. I think it'll probably keep you super, super square and know exactly where you want to go all the time. It's almost like a North Star for your decision making, right? So as life comes at you, you'll compare it to, okay, this is where I want to go. And it doesn't align with that or does it not? It's going to make probably your tougher decisions, in your life a little bit easier. So huge. That's massive. A lot of people have problems with clarity.
I think the biggest thing, I took away from that is not taking no for an answer, or not like if I have a vision or like a dream and it's very complicated. A lot of times when you're telling this dream to other people, they're like, well, like there really isn't a market for it, or how are you going to do that? They talk you out of it based on their own experiences
or insecurities.
Exactly. And the biggest thing is, to anyone listening or whatever, is if you truly believe in something and it sounds super crazy and sounds like super niche, you have to get out of your way and make sure that you build the world where that dream exists.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of like what I focused on when it comes to sustainability. And I have a bunch of goals where I want to make sure that I build a world that is ready to accept these goals. And that's how you achieve your dream. You know, you change the things that are around you to make sure that the dream is achieved. So yeah.
Some power right there, man.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks.
If anybody's like, holy shit, this guy's amazing, where do I find him? What do you want to promote? Where can people listen to your music, find you, ask you questions about sustainability? Where do you want them to go?
Yeah. So music wise, I go by Silk Noir. So
Oh yeah, you do. Let's go.
so it's kind of like black silk. It kind of like takes like the dark energy of like dance music, but also like the silky music of like the orchestra and the violin and stuff. So it's Silk Noir. For sustainability stuff, Marwan Ibrahim on LinkedIn, or also you can find me through the PFI page on Nimblist. If you go on the Nimblist website, you can find me there and just reach out. And if anyone has like sustainability goals or just like wants to learn more about sustainability and how they can take on baby steps, you know, it doesn't have to be anything major. Just they want to start their sustainability journey and they don't know where to start. Don't hesitate to reach out. We'll guide you through it every step of the way, until you don't need us anymore, you know? So that's what we do. And like I said, the music industry is a bit behind. And as Nimblists and with the clients that we worked with and the position that we have the obligation to help these vendors, help these clients take on their sustainability goals, no matter what it takes, you know, and we'll be there with them every step of the way. So
yeah, and I'll leave all that in the show notes down below, all the links for everything for you. So if anybody wants to reach out. So yeah, this was brilliant. One, you taught me a ton about sustainability. I was probably quite ignorant to the smaller steps because you just immediately usually go to solar panels or some huge carbon offset or electric, semis for delivering. I mean, it's all over the place. And some of it's not even achievable for a lot of people in a lot of industries. But I think some of the things around compost, trash, and being smart around that makes a huge difference. Even a compost pile like at your job where everybody could get fresh topsoil whenever, like that's a pretty cool idea. So yeah, it was really cool. Well, thank you for coming on, man. This was brilliant.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad I'm not the only one who struggles with lyrics, you know. So
that was amazing. I'm literally gonna clip that and show that to my wife and be, I'm not the only weird one on the planet.
No, I love that. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having me on your platform. And
yeah, man,
it's truly been an honor.
Yeah, this is brilliant. So everybody, if you want to check them out, certainly check out the notes below. I love the Silky Noir. What a great name. I think, so I just said this to my buddy. We were gaming yesterday together and I was like, because there's some horrible names out there that are just so offensive in the gaming community. But I said, everybody should have to tell their gamer tag or whatever their hobby tag is at their interview. And that will literally determine whether people get hired or not.
That's so smart. Yeah. I mean, I grew up on Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Like,
Samesies.
Oh my God. Like some of those name tags and those things like in those lobbies, it build character. You know what I mean?
Dude,
like
yeah.
Yourself.
Yeah.
You have to make sure your mom's voice is not in the background so they can roast you for it, you know? So
oh yeah. It's a shit show.
Yeah. So it absolutely built character, you know, so that's very funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, thank you once again for coming on, and we'll catch everybody on the next one.